Hi, in this video I'm gonna recreate this UI sound from Baldur's Gate 3. And I'm just gonna use an iPhone as sound recorder. The final recreation of this sound is this. One of the best ways to learn sound design is to recreate sounds made by professionals. So that's what I'm gonna do in this video. And since we don't all own special microphones for recording, I'm gonna use something that a lot of us do own, a trusted iPhone. And just so you know, a process like this is not as streamlined as it looks on YouTube. It's usually very messy and involves a lot of experimentation. I'm gonna show you my final process, but don't be discouraged if you have to go back and forth in your own designs. Experimentation is one of the most fun and rewarding parts of sound design anyway. The sound I'm gonna recreate in this video is a UI sound. UI sounds are often overlooked. They are not the big explosions or the massive weapons in the game, but these sounds are the first thing a player hears when he or she starts the game, and they are the sounds that the player will hear most throughout the game, so it's worth to take your time and make them as good as possible. Before we dive into this, I have a free gift for you. If you want some practical tips of how to turn ordinary sounds into designed ones, there's a great free guide linked in the description below. It takes you through 7 ways of turning the ordinary sounds around you into designed ones, just like I'm gonna do now. Almost all sounds can be broken down into different parts, and if you can hear and understand the different parts, it's much easier to recreate the sound. So I start the recreation process with a simple analysis of the original sound. The sound sequence begins with a short shimmering metallic hit. It continues with some kind of fluttering modulation that almost feels like small wings or something. It then leads into a whooshing sound which finally transitions into the last boom. So those are the 4 main parts of this sound, but there are actually 2 more details that I want to point out. Right after the shimmering metallic hit, at the beginning of the sound there is a low rumble, and just before the boom in the end there is a kind of high crackling sound that gives me a feeling that something is about to dissolve or open up. For the first shimmering hit I found these long metal parts outside my studio that felt like they had the right character. The fluttering movement part felt like the trickiest part, so I thought I'd record everything I found in the house that had some kind of movement, and then when I'm back in the studio again I see what works and not. I thought the whoosh would have some kind of continuous sound that evolves over time but also has some interesting character. But I would also probably need a layer of more or less noise that's more generic that I can use to build up energy with. So I recorded my own voice for the noise layer, and I found this box of magic cards that probably would have enough character to build something interesting out of. For the final part of the sound, the low boom, I just needed some kind of low thump hit. The wood wall in the studio was the first thing I thought of, and it felt like it could work. At this point I felt I had diverse enough source to create all the 4 main layers and the low rumble and high crackle sounds too. I started to design the shimmering metallic hit in the beginning of the sequence. Without any processing, it sounded like this. The sound felt too short and didn't have the metallic resonance I was looking for. I started working on it with some EQ and reverb, but it still didn't have the character I was looking for. I then turned to supermodal, which is a resonance filter that makes your sound like different objects or textures. This became the hero of this process, and the final version of the metallic hit layer sounded like this. I tried a lot of different source recordings for the fluttering movement part and ended up using the simple sound of the plastic hair comb as my main layer. I then added a rolling metal ball and my own voice to support that. This combination gave me a good mix of microdynamics from the comb and sustained noise from my own voice and other sustained tonal elements from the metal ball. The original dice sound has a lot of highs and lows in its flutter, so to achieve something similar to that I duplicated the comb sound into 4 layers. I changed the playback speed and used some pitch shifting and EQ to create a sub, low, mid and high layer. Together with the supporting metal ball and my own voice, but without any processing, it sounded like this. The sound was way too sharp and some layers had a strange stereo image. It also didn't have that magical touch that I was looking for. So I shaped the layers with some EQ, stereo management, transient shaping and filters, and with that processing it became this. It was a step in the right direction, but it still lacked some movement and energy, so I added some life to the sound with a bit of modulation in Multipass and Volcano 3, and the final version of this layer sounded like this. For the Whoosh, it was almost exactly what I had in mind when I recorded the source for it. I used my mouth and the magic cards, but I also added a spinning wooden toy for some extra transient texture. All layers combined without any processing sounded like this. This felt to me like 4 different sounds were playing at once, not a single sound created from 4 different layers. It also felt a bit too much like recorded sounds rather than a magic dice about to reveal something exciting. So I started trying to make it feel more like one sound with some EQ, reverb, transient shaping and stereo processing. And the final step was to make it sound a little bit more magical, so I added some modulation and some resonance filter to it, and the final sound became this. The last main layer is the boom sound. This turned out to work as I hoped when I recorded the source for it. I used 2 of the recordings from the wall hits and then layered them together with one of them slowed down to just playing 25% of its original speed. Layered together without any processing, they sounded like this. Okay, that wasn't super impressive, so I did a bit of processing to it. I added reverb, which I compressed, I tamed the transient and beefed up the low end, and then it sounded like this. I created a low crackling sound from the plastic hair comb. I slowed it down to about 30% of its original speed, and without any further processing it sounded like this. The sound now had too much high end and felt too sharp. I shaped the frequencies with EQ, added some micro dynamics with transgressor, added more movement with filter modulation, and the final low crackling sound became this. The final sound I made for the design was the high crackling sound that plays with the whoosh just before the final boom. For this I used the magic cards, which sounded like this without any processing. The sound had too much low end and didn't have the sharp enough transients to cut through the whoosh. So I pitched it up, EQ'd it quite aggressively, added more transients with transgressor and some modulation with multipass. And the final high crackling sound turned out like this. Okay, now that you know how I made the sound, let's compare it to the original and see how it holds up. It's not a perfect recreation by any means, but it was a great exercise and the final sound came out pretty cool in my opinion. To learn more about how you can take ordinary sounds like the ones I recorded in this video and turn them into designed ones, I suggest you check out the free sound design guide linked in the description below. And if you rather want to work with synthesis than recorded sounds, I can recommend you check out this video where I introduce you to the free great synth Vital. Okay, that's it for this video. I hope you found this valuable. Take care of each other out there and I see you in the next one.